Hey everyone, I've just got a quick message for you guys. I'm currently under the weather and I do apologize in advance for the poor narration. I did what I could to clear the congestion, but obviously I don't sound normal. Anywho, I figured it's better than no video at all, so enjoy. To preface my story, I must inform you of a couple of things about myself. I'm not an American, but a Polish, and I lived in my birth country until the age of 24. This story is about an incident which I experienced back in my old country, and at the time, I was a 20-year-old college student, so let's begin. It was a beautiful afternoon in the summer of 1995. I arrived at my school library early in the morning and planned to stay there until I finished the paper I had to submit by Friday. I walked to my favorite desk at the southwest corner of the library. I loved the spot because of the huge window which allowed plenty of sunlight in. Unfortunately, I was greeted with disappointment upon arriving at the spot. The desk still had 4 seats open, but both window seats were already taken. Sucks, but it's not the end of the world. I sat in one of the chairs next to the aisle and began working on my paper. I sat there for 4 hours straight with no breaks in between and was nearly finished with the assignment when nature called. I got up but noticed something strange about the 2 other people on my desk. A woman and a man sat facing each other and they hadn't moved a muscle during the 4 hours I was there. What I mean to say is, they were both asleep with their heads down on the desk when I first got there, and they were still sleeping in the same position as I got up to go to the bathroom. Really weird if you ask me, but whatever, I had to take a piss. I did my business in the restroom, then came back to my seat. I couldn't have a good look at them when I left because I was in a hurry to empty my bladders, but I paid a lot closer attention when I had come back. I stood by the desk watching them because as soon as I saw them from a better angle, I sensed right away there was something wrong with them. I ran to the librarian and told her about the immobile man and woman on my desk. She followed me to them, but I stopped short of getting too close to the desk out of fear. The librarian tapped on the shoulder of the woman, but got no reactions out of her. She then tapped again and said, "Excuse me, young lady," but still nothing. The librarian then asked if she was okay, and at the same time tried to shake her awake. That's when the woman's head slid off the desk, followed by her lifeless body slamming onto the floor. I screamed. I couldn't help myself. The librarian didn't have much reaction, but that's because she was in a state of shock. We called the police, and when they arrived, both the librarian and I were questioned for a short while before the bodies were taken by another group of official men. The librarian was excused on the spot, but I was taken to the police station for further questioning. I told them everything I knew, but what I knew wasn't all that much. 2 weeks later, I found out through the detective that I kept in touch with how the 2 victims had been killed. As you might have guessed, the 2 may have been dead already by the time I arrived at the library. The detective said both the man and the woman had been injected with a poisonous substance, which he didn't have the freedom to reveal the specific name of. The 2 victims were conscious after the injection, but they were paralyzed as their airways were slowly being constricted. He said the process of death could have taken as long as half an hour, and that the victims were fully aware of everything during the time. The chairs and the bodies had been carefully positioned to make them look as though were sleeping, laying on the desk. They could have been poisoned elsewhere than brought there, but the odds of that were very slim due to the populous nature of the library. The detective felt that the crime had been perpetrated by at least 2 assailants. He believed both the man and the woman were injected with the poison simultaneously while they were busy doing whatever they were doing in the library. The injection and the positioning of the body couldn't have been too hard, since my favorite spot is obstructed from view from most angle looking from the main hole. Even the big window is facing the walkway that's rarely used by the students, meaning the assailants were familiar with the arrangement of our school buildings. It's terrifying to think that I could have been killed in the same manner had I gone to the library just half an hour earlier. I still have nightmares of the victims. They could have been alive, begging for my help desperately in their minds, while I was busy writing my paper, indifferent to their silent cries of help. This is more of a short incident which I'll be describing rather than a full-blown story. So 12 years ago, we bought an old ranch in Wisconsin for a really good price. It wasn't occupied for nearly a decade, and therefore it was quite run down. My wife and I did most of the repairs ourselves, for the exception of plumbing and some of the more technical electrical jobs in and out of the property. The ranch itself is like 100 years old, and the house was built on top of the old one in 1995. The last renovation was made in the late 70s, but for the most part, it's quite an historic site, considering much of the property is at least 100 years old. Walking around the ranch is quite fun because you find all kinds of things within the 200 acres of the land we own. I found an old bicycle from like the 50s, which I plan to restore. We also have a horse carriage in the southwest end of our ranch. I'm no historian, but I think it's got to be at least 70, 80 years old. It's been a lot of fun raising our young children here. My sons explore the creek all day after school instead of playing video games. My baby girl has got her own kitchen in the backyard and she loves to cook with dirt. So far, I've tasted dirt pizza, macaroni, and bacon. We also like to walk to the big tree we've got about 50 yards east from our house. We do reading, running, and even play red light, green light there sometimes. One afternoon in the summer of 2011, I was reading a book to my daughter underneath a giant tree. She likes the spot, and she really loves it when I read for her there. Kelly was resting her head on my lap. Kelly's my daughter, by the way. I read through about 20% of the story when she said, "Daddy, the tree ate the hair," to which I responded with a very generic adult response. "Trees don't eat hair, honey." But she insisted, "No, Daddy, the tree ate the hair. Look at it." So I looked up but couldn't see anything. "It's right there, Daddy," Kelly almost pleaded. I got her up and told her to wait for me as I got ready to climb up the tree. I didn't want to ignore her pleas, and it's important to me that my children know that I'm all ears at all times. All the tricks I had learned from climbing trees as a young boy came in handy. Mainly though, I kept myself in shape, and so the climb was fairly easy. I climbed up halfway, then noticed something strange sticking out of the fork where the middle branches split. I couldn't believe my eyes at first, but it was definitely human hair. I got down from it and let my daughter know she was right. She again asked me why the tree was eating the hair, and I lied to her that it's a wig that was placed there a long time ago, to which eventually the tree grew around it. The second part of the explanation was just me conjecturing, but the thing about the wig was obviously a complete unknown. I took Kelly back home and called the cops right away. It could be nothing, but I still wanted to make sure. A detective came by the next day with another gentleman who I suppose professionalizes in collecting evidence. They took a lock of hair and told me to expect a call within a week. 6 days later, they called and confirmed that the hair in fact belonged to a human being. They sent out a group of men and carefully cut the branches starting from the top until they could get to the fork without obstruction. This is where the lower branches were dividing. Then after that, the cutting of the fork where the hair was located was a painfully slow process. They didn't want to damage whatever was under the overgrown bark, and therefore they were incredibly careful with the cutting. I went back inside the house and must have waited about 3 hours when the detective showed up at my door. He told me they had found a skull inside the tree, but that I shouldn't worry for my family's safety since it must have been placed there decades ago. He said he was going to send it to a lab for further analysis and that he'd inform me of the results as soon as they come in. I thanked him and that was the end for the day. The detective kept his promise and called me up after about a month. He told me that the skull was dated to be roughly about 100 years old. It belonged to a white male, approximately 30 to 40 years of age. He was killed by blunt trauma to the head, and for some reason, the assailant or assailants decapitated him and left his head at the top of the tree where the branches divide. Nature took over the rest, and the barks grew around the skull. I've asked around and did some research on human hair, and as it turns out, the decomposition of hair is heavily dependent on the environmental condition. What happened to the skull is technically possible but highly improbable because the hair couldn't stay on the skull for long enough of time for the tree to grow around it. Basically, the scalp would decompose fairly quick and the hair would fall off during the process. However, a doctor whom I spoke to by chance at a local bar did tell me that some type of hemp cloth could have been wrapped around the head initially, protecting the hair and also keeping it in place for several years. Then, as the tree grew around it, the hemp would naturally decompose and it would happen at a much faster rate than the decomposition of hair. That explanation was good enough for me, and I didn't look into it any further than that. I still live in the same ranch, and no, we haven't had any ghosts visit us or anything like that. It was just the most bizarre thing that has ever happened to me and my family, so I thought I'd share with you and your viewers. I hope you found it as fascinating and horrendous as I had. Goodbye, Dennis. I've been working as a private detective for the last 12 years. And the 7 years prior to that, I worked as a police detective until I was kicked out of the force. Don't ask why, it's a long story. But anyhow, I got a new case 2 months ago from the parents of a kid that went missing 6 years from today. I'll call the kid Brandon for the duration of this story. Brandon was 14 years old when he was abducted and not missing, according to the parents. The police closed the case as runaway, but the parents insisted that there was absolutely no reason for Brandon to run away from home. Now, it's important that you know that in most cases of runaway children, the parents have a hard time accepting that the kids have refused their care and guidance. It's a normal reaction, and with time, most parents learn to accept their role in the disappearance of their children. So the parents of Brandon were either so stubborn that they stuck with their story for 6 years, or they must have had a good reason for believing the case for abduction. After reviewing the case extensively and interviewing the parents for tens of hours in several separate occasions, I've come to believe the allegation of the parents without a hint of doubt. They were right to doubt the investigation of the police. I won't go into full detail of Brandon's abduction case because this story is more about me than Brandon. What I will tell you though is that the parents had given me a pair of gloves which they claim belonged to the abductor. Initially, the police had the gloves in their possession as evidence, but later when the case was closed as runaway, they gave the gloves back to the parents. That's how strongly the police felt of their assessment of the case. It really depends on the case, but I normally get paid in the range of $500 to $1,000 per case. But Brandon's parents wanted me to fully concentrate on their case and their case only. So I was paid handsomely to work for them for the duration of 6 months. I worked on the case 9 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. It was frustrating because the more I had learned of the case, the more questions arose. So one day, I began wearing the gloves in a symbolic fashion. It's something that I do when I try to get inside the mind of a criminal. I've never been a smoker in my life, but in a murder case which I took a few years back, I actually began smoking because the assailant was a heavy smoker. Not that it matters, but I quit smoking after helping the police solve the case. This time though, it was a little different. Whenever I wore the gloves, I got into the character a little too deeply. You see, by that point, I had already found a suspect. I was often monitoring him day and night, and also put someone else in my place when I couldn't watch him myself. He was a butcher and worked roughly 10 miles away from Brandon's place. He was renting an apartment 8 miles away, so either at work or at home, he was never too far from Brandon. I did some digging and found out that the butcher was actually well regarded by his co-workers. He was known to be funny and generous, so then there was nothing that stuck out as someone who'd abduct a kid. But I dug deeper and met up with people in his past, way back in his past, and they all had vastly different opinions on him. To make long story short, basically the butcher was a completely different person 3 years ago, when he was residing in a town out of state. People there described him as one of the most unpleasant human beings they had ever met. But here's the thing, when you dig even deeper into his past, you begin to notice a pattern. In another town for a number of years, he lives as a Mr. Nice Guy, so that's going back 5 years from today. You rewind all the way to 8 years ago, then all you hear is about how big of an asshole the guy was to everyone. From that, I gathered that I was most likely dealing with someone with multiple personality disorder. The investigation continued, and one day, I was at home going over some documents of the butcher. I had the gloves on and tried to put together all the information I had gathered up to that point, in hopes to recreate the events leading up to the abduction of Brandon. One moment, I was thinking clearly and putting together the puzzle that is the alleged crime inside my head. Then it was almost like I had lost control of my thoughts, because out of nowhere, I began to picture some of the most horrible things a human being could do to a fellow human being, and that really excited me. I had a happy grin on my face, and honestly, I feel that I would have done something horrible if anyone was next to me. I snapped out of it eventually, took off the gloves right away because of the eerie feeling, then went outside for some fresh air. I wore the gloves 3 more times after that, not because of my habit, but because I so badly yearned to feel that emotion again, the joy of torturing and killing someone. As of the day of writing this email to you, I've managed to stay away from the gloves for over a week. I want to put them on so badly, but there's a part of me that continues to push me away from them. It's like drugs, you know you shouldn't do it, but it's insanely hard to stay away from them. It makes me wonder, have I always enjoyed hurting others? Or have I gone too far this time in attempting to get into character? That's actually how I try to rationalize my current situation, but truthfully, I feel that there's something that I'm unable to comprehend about the gloves. I've never once gotten into character this deeply, so why now? How is it that I get these murderous feelings whenever I put on the gloves? And why is it so hard to stay away from them? Somehow and some way, I've managed to keep the gloves in a box and left them sealed in a shed in my backyard. I have, however, dreamt of something strange a few nights back, and that dream led me to find the body in a field near the town where the butcher used to live before he moved there. Did you process what I just said? I dreamt of a crime that the butcher had committed, and when I went to the very spot where the body was buried, it was actually there. I know I was the butcher in my dream because I saw a scar on my left hand, a large jagged one which the butcher has. The body wasn't Brandon's, but it did belong to another kid. I was able to concoct a story about how I was able to find the body through an ongoing investigation of the butcher. The cops ate up the story, especially because I'm a former police myself, but unfortunately, there was no physical evidence to tie the butcher to the body other than the fact that it was found in the town where he previously resided. The police in both towns have reopened the case, both towns meaning the town where Brandon was abducted and as well as the town where the body of another kid was found. The butcher is now under surveillance, but I know they won't catch him doing anything wrong for some time. Currently, this is his hibernation period. Remember, he goes through cycles. This is what serial killers do. Their desire to kill slowly creeps up, so they pick a victim or two, make the kill, then move on to another town as the cycle repeats. It looks as though he's killed recently, and hence the wonderful behavior described by his coworkers. Everything I've learned of the butcher so far leads me to believe that Brandon will not be found alive, if found at all. For the past couple of days, I've been dreaming of something similar to the last dream, which led me to the body of the young boy. I feel that it's coming to a conclusion, the dream that is, and maybe what I see in the end will lead me to another body, maybe even Brandon's, but whatever I see in my dream this time, I will not trace the dream back in the real world. Let's just say that if I find another body, it's more likely that I'll become the strongest suspect. There's also the not so small matter of the effects the gloves had on me. I'm not one to believe much in spiritual things, but after all that's happened, it's hard to deny that I've been behaving, seeing, and experiencing some of the most bizarre and improbable things ever since gaining possession of them. I'm done with this case as far as I'm concerned. The police will have to pick up the slack going forward because I don't plan to spend the rest of my life in jail, or even worse, act out on the new vile emotions that have been building up in me lately. I plan to return all the money I've received from Brandon's parents, minus the expenditures incurred so far. As for the gloves, I lied to them that I've lost them. I don't think anyone should be allowed near them, and that's why I plan to burn them tonight. I thought maybe the butcher left the gloves in Brandon's room because maybe, just maybe, he wanted to end the cycle of the killings that would have otherwise continued. Maybe it's more of a wish than reality, but whatever it may be, I'll make sure those gloves will never be passed on to another living soul. That is the end of this video, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you goes out to Nina, Young, and Joseph for the submissions. Thank you all for the great read. Alright, the first thing we have to talk about, I think you guys would all agree, is Club Penguin shutting down. I'm sick because of that and not because of my cold. Oh god, I've got tears in my eyes. Okay, next topic on the menu. By about now, you guys probably all know the latest YouTube bug which automatically unsubs you from certain channels, and that's been happening to quite a few of my subscribers as well. So first, I would suggest that you check when you can if you are still subscribed to me, because the unsubbing normally happens when a new video has been uploaded. Secondly, even if you get unsubscribed, if you like or comment on my videos, that gives it a more likelihood that you'll see my contents in your suggested sidebar or the recommended homepage. But if you don't care for my contents, then first, why are you here? But more importantly, this information does not pertain to you, so there's that. And finally, for the small percentage, the very small percentage who will complain, I don't like giving likes to those who ask for it. Let me put it this way, I almost never ask for likes. This happens maybe 5 times a year to remind my true supporters why it's so important that they continue helping my contents rise up if they want this channel to continue existing. If I can spend some 30 to 40 hours to make a single video, and you happen to enjoy my contents, I don't think it's absurd of me to be able to ask you for your support. Which, by the way, liking a video takes what, 2 seconds? But this time around, it's not even about the support, but it's about you being able to see my contents even in the event that you get unsubbed automatically. But yeah, like and comment if you care at all, but otherwise let's move on to the next topic. Okay, so this could be boring for you guys, but I hope you'll give me a chance to help promote a budding artist. This is not a paid promotion, and the person I'm doing this for is one of you guys. Her handle on YouTube is Kittens Luna Asylum. That's again Kittens Luna Asylum. And she's been subbed to my channel since before I hit 1,000 subscribers, I think. She's the person behind the outro art for my videos, and she didn't do it hoping for anything in return. You have to remember my channel was tiny back when she drew the character for me. I've been sent lots of artwork in a little over a year of running this channel, and while I do appreciate and love all those works, Kitten's drawings are definitely my favorite, not to mention the fact that she's also one of my favorite people. Kittens just recently enrolled in college to become a full-fledged artist, and she's already really good at what she does. She's got an Instagram account where she posts her creations, and I know all of you guys enjoy creepy stuff. I mean, you are here. And obviously she does too. You know what, let me put up some of her work and let you guys judge for yourselves. Kittens is still very young, but she's got a genuine passion for her dream. She's a really nice British lad. Do Brits call young girls lad as well? I don't know, but yeah. I don't know if it helps, but she's a really sweet girl. Whenever you ask someone for their time and attention, you're asking a lot. I understand that. But just like you folks have given me a chance when my contents were a lot shittier than today, I think it'll be really nice if you can help this young girl promote her work to the world. It'll mean a lot to me, and I know it'll mean the world to Kittens. If you don't like her work, then unfollow. It shouldn't be any other way. But if you do like her work, then you can enjoy really cool arts and at the same time help a young girl grow as an artist. I'll leave the link to her Insta account in the video description and in my comment as well. So please, if you'll be kind enough to give my young British friend a chance to show off her work to you, then I would truly appreciate it. Finally, there was a dumbass story that I wanted to tell you guys, but I think I've spent all of the allotted time for the outro on this video. I'm sure you folks are eager to listen to another one of my personal stories, but nonetheless, we'll save it for another day. Thank you guys for all your support. I'll talk to you on the next one. Goodbye.